guys, before you go and do those quotes, you know, based upon that quote to win ratio, that you're going to win more jobs than you can handle. It is the ideal time to raise your prices.
Until right now, this very moment, contractors have always been on their own, not as tradespeople, but being alone and knowing how to take their business to the next level. They call us working class, they call us blue collar. They say that we don't have the smarts to become the business owner that we're meant to be. That is such bullshit. You have the ability. You're more than any of that. The question really is, where do you get the insights that you need specific to contracting to systemize your business so you can get your profits to pay for your freedom? I'm Andrew Houston. I'm going to show you how to make more profits, how to get more control, how to get more freedom in the simplest, quickest way possible without any of that bullshit. Welcome to the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. Listen up, level up, and if you learn something, like the video, subscribe to the channel, change your business, change your life.
Hey, Rockstars, Andrew Houston here with another No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. What are we talking about today? Well, I'm going to tell you what we're talking about, which is making the right decisions. How the hell do you go about making the right decisions as a business owner? Like, we got so many things coming at us, right? Left, right, right in front of us, behind us, all over the place. From our team asking us questions, to our customers asking us questions, to even ourselves, especially ourselves, lying in bed, driving, we're on the road, going from one job site to the next, or going to go see a client, and we're constantly thinking about different ways to improve our business. And really, at the bottom line, all those people that are coming to us, all those questions that they're asking us and the questions that we're asking ourselves is really about trying to improve the business. All right? It's trying to give us the ability to see things in a certain light that we can actually look at it and make the right decisions. But making the right decisions, there's a skill set to it. There's a couple of key components to it, but the biggest component to it that I'm going to talk to you about today is, if we split it almost like a ball, right? One side of the ball is emotions, right? The other side of the ball is data. And what we want to do is we want to make data-driven decisions as much as possible. Now, I'm going to walk you through on today's No Bullshit Podcast. Seriously, no bullshit. What are some of the key pieces of data that you need to gather and leverage to make better decisions? Here's the thing. Ask yourself this question, okay? And literally turn off this podcast if this is not resonating with you. If you asked yourself, looking back, even just today, right? Even, in the last 24 hours, let alone last week, last month, last year, how many of your decisions were data-driven decisions versus how many of those decisions was your gut, was your emotions, was your feelings, okay? This is the dangerous part. Now, I'm not saying that you don't want to apply your gut and your instincts. Okay, as tradespeople, we have incredible instincts because we've had to. Being out in the field, being throwing curveballs. I know it. As a fellow tradie, we learn to troubleshoot things. All right, we learn to, to make judgment calls and put out fires and really have a good instinct, especially in a firefighting situation. But our job, as much as possible, is to prevent fires, prevent those sparks from starting. So when we're making decisions, we're proactively looking at what's going to make the company better, make things easier. And by the way, everything I'm talking about, especially in this podcast around making, great decisions, is also applicable to our life, on the personal front. Okay. And, today we're going to focus heavily on the business side of things, but you want to take these principles as much as possible, any of these podcasts that we talk about here, and most of them, if not all of them, we can apply to our personal life as well. All right. So back to the topic of making the right decisions. You've got to look and ask yourself, back to that question, am I making enough decisions based upon data? If most of your decisions, if 50%, 60, 70, 80%, anything over 50, okay, is a big red flag. All right. You should be making at least 70% of your decisions based upon data. And if you don't have the right data, okay, then we're going to talk about that as well, because there's a process that we want to go through. If we don't have, the data, like what do we do, Andrew? Okay. So first things first, part one of this, I shouldn't call it part one, but the first area I'm going to cover off is like, what are some examples of making data-driven decisions? I'm going to try and pick a couple of the key areas for you guys. So, and then, after I give some of those examples, maybe some of you guys, already have some of this data and you can apply it. And then the next part of this podcast, which we're going to get into, is going to be, well, what do I do if I don't have the data? All right. And, the other part that we're going to talk about as well is we're going to talk about, like, how do I know what data I need? So let's get into this. So really quickly, examples of making data-driven decisions. We're going to, I'm going to pick, let's say, raising your prices. You're like, what? Yes, guys, look, at this time of the year, the sun is out, leaves are coming on the trees, it's springtime in North America. It's going to be different for everybody in different parts of the world. But here in North America, it's springtime. That means for contractors, it's when the ground gets broken. It's when foundations are being put in. It's when things start to get busy. And one of the best things I can tell you right now is it's this time of the year that you need to seriously be considering raising your price. So let's look at, using some data and what data we'd use to make a data-driven decision to say, hey, I'm going to raise my price, and we're going to use some data to go and, how long should I keep it raised? Should I increase it more? Let's use some data, okay? So using data in this case is we want to look at the things that affect the result that we're after, all right? And this is going to lead into, one of the other parts we're going to be covering off today, which is like, how do I know what data that I need? You want to work backwards from the result that you want. So in this case, it's making more profit. Okay. If you're a contractor and you're like, yeah, I want to make more profit. Of course you fucking want to make more profit. And you're like, yeah, but what's one of the ways that I can make more profit, on the sales that I have? Well, what we're looking at today is specifically the potential of increasing your pricing. So there's lots of other ways. Okay. But there's going to be other pieces of data that we're going to use for different aspects of making more profit with our sales. But in this case, it's, hey, one of the ways is maybe increasing my pricing. So what data do I need, Andrew? Like, what do I need to make that decision of increasing my pricing? Well, here's some of the data that you need. And I'm going to use an example. You want to know how many jobs that you have. Okay. You want to know, in other words, how much work capacity you have. So to gather that data, what you want to look at is you want to look at how much work you've got right now, as far as, on the books of people that have committed to you, and the man hours that takes to do that work. So you might say, hey, Andrew, I've landed X number of jobs based upon the data and the quotes that I've done that, equates to keeping my guys busy for like the next, 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, could be longer than that. Okay. But let's say the data said the next, 3 weeks. So now that we have this data, just follow me here. Then we're going to look at, well, how many quotes do I have? How many jobs am I quoting right now? Let's say, for example, you had 15 quotes on your table. Just looking at data, okay, as an example, we got 15 quotes. The other piece of information you need, okay, so we talked about how much work you got. That's one piece of data. Next piece of data we need is like, well, how many quotes do we have? Okay, so say it's 15. Then we're going to look at what is our quote to win ratio? Okay, that's a piece of data that most contractors don't have that you definitely want to get. But let's say that you had that. Quote to win ratio means that, hey, based upon, if I get 10 quotes and my quote to win ratio is, let's say 80%, out of those 10 quotes, I would land 8 of them. Okay, that's an example of a quote to win ratio using 80%. And so when we look at this, hopefully I'm not losing you. When we look at this, if we had 15 quotes, and we knew that our quote to win ratio was 80%. Okay. I guess 80% of 15, I'm just guessing here. Well, let me just forget guessing. Why are we guessing, guys? Like, come on, Andrew. We're using data, right? So we're going to say 15 quotes times 80%. We're going to win 12 jobs out of those quotes, out of those opportunities. So now what do we do, Andrew? Where are you going with this raising prices? Well, I'll tell you where I'm going. If we look at those quotes and we figure out the average job size for those quotes is basically, let's say, for example, it's 3 days. Maybe it's, let's just say simple terms, it's a half a week, all right? And we're going to land 12 jobs. What's that tell you? Guys, that tells you that if you land all those jobs, all right, you're going to have roughly 6 weeks of work. Now, maybe you might go, man, that's too much work. Holy shit, like that's too much for me. You want to get a comfort zone of what you're, comfortable with as far as the amount of work that you've got on your plate, okay? This is going to help you in so many different ways, but back to raising prices. If it comes back and you go, I can't even handle that work, like that's too much work for my guys, before you go and do those quotes, based upon that quote to win ratio, that you're going to win more jobs than you can handle. It is the ideal time to raise your prices, okay? So that's one aspect that we want to look at this. Another aspect we want to look at this is that if you are winning 80%, if you're listening in, your contractor winning anything over 70%, even 60% of your jobs, guys, you're pricing your jobs too low, all right? If it's 70%, for sure you're pricing your jobs too low. You want to be in the range of around 60 to 50%, okay? You want to be dealing with people that really want to work with you, not because you're the cheapest, but because you provide the most amount of value, because they respect the workmanship that you do, that they respect, how you quoted the job and your management skills and their confidence in you. You don't want people buying from you because you're lowest price. So taking a step back, okay, hopefully I didn't lose many people here, but you're looking at how much work you've got. The question is, should I raise my prices? Then we're looking at how many quotes do we have to do? And then we're looking at what our quote to win ratio is. And then we're asking ourselves, hey, based upon our quote to win ratio, can we even handle this work? And if the answer is we can't, then guys, you don't want to win 80%. If you work backwards and find out that you could only handle 50% of that, then you want to increase your prices more than probably 5%, such that you're projecting that you're going to reduce your conversion rate based upon how much work that you and your team can handle. This does a lot of things, okay? Leveraging data. It gives you the ability to not just go and quote and quote and quote and then end up being screwed, that you don't have enough guys, you accepted too much work that you can't deliver on. And it does so many other things on top of giving you the information to make a data-driven decision as far as raising your pricing, okay? So guys, that's an example. So now we want to look at, Andrew, what data do I need? Well, guys, you always pick what is the result that you're going after. Then you want to identify what is the strategy that you're thinking of applying. And then you want to ask yourself, what is the data that I need? Sort of reverse engineering, just like we did with quoting the jobs and how much work we had and quote to win ratio. And we worked backwards though from, how many jobs would we land? Okay. That's what we worked back from with the strategy of increasing our pricing. So whatever strategy that whatever area of your business you're trying to improve, pick a strategy. Okay. And then ask yourself, do I have the right data to know whether or not that strategy is the right strategy? Okay. If you do have the data, then apply it. Okay. And test and measure. And whenever you're using data to make data-driven decisions, ideally you want to test two different things. Okay. So if we're increasing our pricing, you might want to heavily consider increasing your pricing, differently for different services. Okay. If you're doing a marketing campaign, you want to do two different, say it's an ad in a paper for trying to find people or attract more work. You always want to test two things against the same result that you're after. And one will always be better than the other. And how do I know that? Based upon data. It's one of the most powerful things that you can apply when you're testing out whether or not one thing's going to work better, than the other. You don't test one thing and then you go and test the other thing. You want to test them back to back at the same time, okay? One will always be better than the other. It's just the law of the universe. So, look, guys, make as many data-driven decisions as possible. Pick the one area of your business right now. You might have a whole bunch of areas, okay? You might go, Andrew, where do I start, okay? Where do I focus? I've got so many areas in my business I want to improve. Focus in on, you might want to go to a whiteboard with this. You might want to get maybe your right-hand person involved and just write down what are some of the, key areas. Say there's 3 or 5 different key areas of your business you want to improve. Then you're going to pick one key strategy for each, okay? Then you're going to ask yourself, well, what data do we need to make this work, to figure out whether or not, the strategy is going to work or not. And you want to reverse engineer and just quickly ask yourself, well, do we have the data for that strategy to work? And if the answer is no, and you go to the next one, it's like, do we have the data, to see if the strategy is going to work, just like the example I shared with you guys today? And if the answer is yes, then you focus in on the areas of your business or a area of your business with a strategy that you have data for. That allows you to accelerate the decisions you make. It allows you to amplify the success that you're going to have. And it allows you and buys you time to focus in on the other strategies based upon what data you do have or don't have. Always focus in on the areas that you've already got the data for. Whether you're more, excited about a certain strategy than another one, trust me, focus in on making the right decisions, putting the right energy and right effort in on the areas of your business that you already have data for. I'm going to give you another little piece here. I'm not going to get too deep into this one, but one of the best data-driven places to focus in on and leverage is your financials. If you're not leveraging your profit and loss statement, let alone your balance sheet, to make data-driven decisions, guys, you are missing out on a ton of opportunity to improve almost every aspect of your business. You need to know and look at your profit and loss statement. You need to know whether or not you're even profitable and how profitable. And you need to look at those profit and loss statements and just start looking at the numbers and asking yourself, does this number look right? Is this a number that I like? Do I like that it's this profitable, or I don't like that it's not this profitable? And then start asking your questions. What could change that? What data could change that? It could be your expenses. Maybe it's reducing expenses. Maybe it's making your team more efficient. Okay. But you leverage the data that you have to make data-driven decisions. So this is Andrew Houston from Profit for Contractors. If you guys want any more help on this, if you want, to have a session with one of our strategists or even me to sit down and talk about your business, to break down like some of the greatest opportunities that are right in front of you that maybe you're not able to see because you're just too close to the business, then just type in profits and we'll get you some help. Okay. Outside of that, leverage this podcast team and I'm talking to you, Mr. Contractor, just to pick one thing in this podcast, just one thing to apply to your business. And in this case, what's the one area in your business that you can improve, leveraging data that you currently have to make better decisions, to increase and amplify your chances of success, and really make it a way easier for you to move your business forward. So we'll see you on the flip. Andrew Houston with another No Bullshit podcast. And that's based upon data. See you on the flip. Ciao.
Hey, rock stars. Thank you for watching the No Bullshit podcast for contractors. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button. And if you're serious about growing and need help, click on the link below. Myself and my team would love to help and give you the necessary tools so you can take your contracting business to the next level. And remember, dominate, delegate, and deliver.